Marlowe, the only true poet genius Shakespeare, borrowed and modified this name from a real living man named William Shakespeare from Stratford, but, believe it or not, also borrowed or invented a multiplicity of other pen or pseudonyms. For centuries, the world has revered the name William Shakespeare, the poet of sonnets, the dramatist of Hamlet and King Lear, the voice of English Renaissance drama. But what if that name, Shakespeare, was just a mask, a pseudonym, a necessary fiction to protect the true author? I invite you to follow the evidence, not the myth, to discover a man of immense genius and danger, Christopher Marlowe. More than the author behind Shakespeare's name, he has been the prolific voice behind a multiplicity of names: Drayton, Barnfield, Markham, Heywood, Wither, Breton, Bass, Beaumont, and more. Let's uncover the true shape of literary history. It is stranger and more thrilling. Part 2. The Faked Death. Marlowe's disappearance in May 1593. Christopher Marlowe suddenly disappears from the London scene, forever. According to the coroner's report, discovered centuries later, in 1925 by Leslie Hodson, Marlowe was killed in a private house in Deptford, allegedly in a quarrel over the reckoning of the bill. All three witnesses were government agents. The inquest was hastily arranged. The coroner's language was oddly formal and vague. The supposed killer, Ingram Fraser, was released without punishment. The body was never publicly identified. There was no grave, no public mourning, no poetic elegy. Just days earlier, Marlowe had been facing charges of high treason, rebellion, and sedition, crimes punishable by torture or execution. Logically, these facts raise urgent questions. Was this death too convenient? Too quiet? Could Marlowe's disappearance have been orchestrated by powerful allies, allowing him to escape condemnation and live on under new identities? Part 3. A Voice That Did Not Die. The Continuity of Style. Only weeks after Marlowe's alleged death, a new poetic voice appears. Shakespeare, with Venus and Adonis, published in 1593, and Lucrece following in 1594. The name Shakespeare did not appear on the title page, but in both cases, at the end of the dedication. Shakespeare, a name previously unknown in literary circles. Yet the style is unmistakably Marlowe's. Elaborate rhetoric, erotic tension, classical imagery, and a fascination with fate and power. The themes of exile, disgrace, hidden identity are not just present, they fully dominate. Stylometric studies reveal profound overlaps between Marlowe's and Shakespeare's language, not influence, identity. Part 4. Michael Drayton, the court poet with a hidden hand. Around the same time, another name rises, Michael Drayton. Like Shakespeare, Drayton addresses the Earl of Southampton. His poem, Idea's Mirror, contains sonnets of longing, obsession, and secrecy, like Shakespeare's own. Drayton also wrote historical epics, elegies, and verse dramas. His learning was vast, his style deeply Marlovian. Yet strangely, Drayton never once refers to Shakespeare, nor vice versa. Drayton must have been another mask. A way for Marlowe to explore courtly themes, patriotic history, and philosophical poetry under royal protection. Thus, Drayton was not a rival, but a reflection, a mirror of the exiled mind behind the mask. Part 5. Thomas Heywood, the prolific ghost. Thomas Heywood claimed to have written or contributed to over 200 plays. Be aware more than any Elizabethan playwright. His work is humane, theatrical, and often moral. His characters wrestle with guilt, disguise, and redemption. Yet Heywood left little behind. No private letters, no clear biography, no contemporaneous praise. His career spanned 4 decades, but he remained a ghost in life and in death. Heywood has been Marlowe's domestic mask, a channel to write for the people, for the public stage, while hiding in plain sight. The themes are too familiar, the scale is too vast, the silence surrounding him too strange. Part 6. Other voices, same genius. Barnfield, Breton, Markham, Byassa, beyond Drayton and Heywood, the shadows multiply. Richard Barnfield, whose poems were printed as if by Shakespeare himself, wrote of love between men, mythological themes, and intellectual exile. Nicholas Breton, a master of short prose and reflective poetry, often sounds like Marlowe's quieter religious counterpoint. Gervase Markham, a soldier poet, mixed realism with poetic force, writing under many genres and tones. And William Bass, author of a famous elegy on Shakespeare, was hidden Marlowe, writing his own epitaph in disguise. These were not simply contemporaries. They were facets of one consciousness, each offering a different register of the same voice. Part 7. The Two John Davises, Poetic Clues and Puzzling Silences. Among the many literary witnesses to the Shakespeare phenomenon, 2 names stand out, both named John Davies. First, John Davies of Hereford, the writing master, moralist, and author of The Scourge of Folly around 1611. In one epigram, he directly addresses our English Terence Mr. Will, Shakespeare, a title linking Shakespeare to the Roman comic playwright. But the tone is elusive. Some say, "Good Will, which I in sport do sing, hadst thou not played some kingly parts in sport, thou hadst been a companion for a king, and been a king among the meaner sort." Played is the operative word. Davies seems to hint at a theatrical persona, a man who played at kingship, not necessarily lived it. Yet he never mentions any Shakespeare works and offers no clear praise for the supposed author of Hamlet, Lear, or Othello. Then there is Sir John Davies, lawyer and poet, close to the political elite. Despite publishing extensively and writing of many poets, he never once mentioned Shakespeare, an eerie silence for such a figure. Between them, these two Davieses draw a curious portrait. One speaks cryptically of a player figure with no depth. The other stays completely silent. Could this be because they both knew the truth? The phrase, "But I used nameless names because their shame should light on nobody that bears the blame," echoes this mystery, suggesting borrowed and invented names with spirit and legacy beyond flesh and bone. Part 8. John Clapham, A Mask in the House of Power. John Clapham, secretary to Lord Burleigh William Cecil, was no ordinary civil servant. In 1591, 2 years before Marlowe's alleged death, Clapham published Narcissus, a poem in Latinized style, dedicated to the Earl of Southampton. This is the same Southampton later addressed by Shakespeare. Narcissus explores themes of self-love, identity and destruction by beauty, mirroring Marlowe's hero in Leander and foreshadowing Shakespeare's sonnets. But Clapham disappears from literary history just as Shakespeare appears. Be aware, Marlowe, under Burleigh's protection, used Clapham to establish literary credentials under elite patronage before adopting his more theatrical masks. Part 9, and the Fletchers, a literary legacy shared. John Fletcher, who succeeded Shakespeare at the King's Men, was a major playwright of the Jacobean era. His style blends Marlowe's rich language and tragicomic balance. But John was not alone. His brother, Phineas, wrote The Purple Island, a vast allegorical poem about the human body and soul. Their uncle, Giles Fletcher, really the elder, wrote religious and political verse. His son, Giles Fletcher, really the younger, was a diplomat and poet known for Christ's victory and triumph. These Fletchers lived and wrote in close contact with the literary and political circles that Marlowe moved within. Some scholars suggest that the Fletchers were part of Marlowe's extended pseudonymous family, continuing his legacy under shifting names, themes, and genres. Their work shows similar rhythms, ideas, and theatrical sensibilities, echoes of the vanished Marlowe voice. Part 10. Why multi-pseudonymity? The power and necessity of mass. Why would Marlowe write under so many names? Why choose to hide behind mass rather than claim glory openly? The answer lies in the politics and dangers of the time. Accused of atheism, rebellion, and treason, Marlowe was a marked man. The theater was a place of risk, but also of disguise and coded speech. By fragmenting his identity, Marlowe could explore forbidden ideas, religious, skepticism, political dissent, and sexual complexity without risking his life. The many names, Shakespeare, Drayton, Wither, Heywood, Markham, Clapham, Fletcher, Breton, Barnfield, and many more, were shields and windows showing different facets of his genius. Together, they formed a constellation, a literary revolution hiding in plain sight. This is the multi-pseudonymity theory. It offers a new lens to understand the birth of modern English literature, a voice that was never silenced, just transformed.